Morgan, you need to tell us when you're ready.
She's already got it live streaming.
Okay.
Yeah, as soon as you've got everybody here that you need here, I think that it's just fine. We just can't start, I think, until 5:30. But
Correct.
other than that, I'm ready to go when you guys are.
Is
Perfect.
Brian Saxton coming?
He is. Mhm.
Okay.
Diane, I like that elephant on your shoulder.
That does look kind of funny, doesn't it?
I like it. Sometimes it feels that way, right?
Sometimes.
Hi, Brian. I'm just calling to see if you're going to join us on city council meeting tonight. Okay, look forward to seeing you. Okay. Okay, well, we'll look for you to come on then. Thanks. See you, bye. Okay, I just talked to Brian. He said he's going to get on here if he can. So 5:30, let's go ahead and we'll get started. Let's go ahead and just, great to have you out with us. Hopefully, I believe I seen Matt. There he is. He's just not at his office. There he is. Okay. Let me, if I can, just welcome you all out. Let me just do a roll call. We've got Jan Burrell. We do have Diane Wilson. We got Joe Paul. We got Ann Jackson. And we're just now waiting for Brian to come on. And when he does, I'll check him off. So with that, let's go ahead and we'll get started. We do need to, we're going to ask, and by the way, we're not going to have a moment of prayer or flag Pledge of Allegiance. We're just going to go ahead and jump right into this workshop. Camille, I believe, excuse me, Travis, I think you're up first, but I don't see Travis on. Yes, there he is. Travis, I think you're on if you want to go ahead and begin the conversation on recreation discussions.
Hey, Mayor, just a second. Can we have a Pledge of Allegiance or not?
It's not scheduled or planned for on workshops.
Okay.
Okay, Mr. Mayor and members of council, I appreciate you giving me a few minutes. Over the last month or so, we've discussed several situations within the Parks and Recreation world, and we were tasked to give you guys some answers on potentially reopening of the recreation complex. And so what we've done is we've made, last night I sent you all out kind of a procedural manual of how we would open if we were to open in a yellow stage. And I wanted to, A, get your feedback on that, but B, also answer some of the questions that were directed to staff from 2 weeks ago. The three main concerns that we identified from the city council meeting of 2 weeks ago was procedural, economical, and legal. In procedural, we wanted to address a lot of that by the email last night, but there was a few things that we didn't talk about that I wanted you to be aware of. Currently, Chief Golden has done a phenomenal job in getting us PPE equipment, thermometers, different things in that line, as well as building maintenance. Has kind of been a little bit ahead of the curve and able to supply us with a lot of supplies. So we feel comfortable that we can protect our staff with PPE equipment, with mask and gloves and temperature checking and those kind of items. As far as members go, like we talked about last night or in the email and a little bit last week, some of that is going to be with signage. And also we will have people roving through the facility to discuss it. There isn't a lot of policing we can do in certain areas. Economically, the cost to open the complex would be roughly $8,000 a week prior to that September 8th deadline that we talked about. Camille has worked really hard to get me those kind of numbers. So anytime we open it prior to September 8th, we would need to address the $8,000 cost per week. As far as additional cost to staffing, the fact that one of our full-time people that historically goes to another facility would be there, we wouldn't anticipate an increased cost in staffing from that regard. Memberships, we talked about that. We've done our research and spoken with a lot of facilities who have done Corbett passes and different things like that. And all the ones we spoke with said they wish they wouldn't have, that it just from a PR perspective caused a lot of grief with the people that had memberships. They felt like they were being double dipped. If we did feel though that was in our best interest as a staff, we've decided on $25 a month for Roy residents and $32 a month for non-residents. Legally, I'm going to let Andy discuss some things there, but from our perspective, we just wanted to answer those questions for you. I know Andy's done some research on increased liability and or additional waivers that I'll turn the time over to him. And then when he's done talking, any questions that you guys may have, we'd be glad to answer.
Okay, thank you, Travis. Andy?
I know there were some questions at our last meeting about the liability issue. And typically, if there's negligence on the part of the city, we can be sued for negligence. However, it'll fall into place quite often if there's a policy in place that we don't follow. But there is a provision in our governmental immunity laws that say if, in fact, I will read it to you so I get it word for word, but it says there's immunity from claims resulting from the implementation or failure to implement measures to control the cause of epidemic or communicable disease or to respond to national, state, or local emergencies. So typically we can always be sued, but I think under the circumstances, the immunity would come into play.
Okay, Andy, thank you.
Could I ask Andy, is that with our own employees as well as patrons?
It is.
Okay.
Okay, council comments?
Well, why don't we just wait till we go green in July and then we don't have to worry about any of this.
You're so optimistic.
Then they won't have to go through all those procedures of cleaning and making them do this and making them do that. Because isn't that the rumor? I don't know. It's a lot of work.
I think it's going to be a new world as far as cleanliness, as far as hygiene. I think that's not going to go away.
Right.
We're going to be required to have much stricter maintenance of that type of facility than we've ever had.
Jan, I couldn't agree more with you. And we've talked about that several times as a staff of new normal and the increased ability for us to provide cleaning by not only us, but by our members as well in fitness rooms and highly touched areas. It's allowed us to kind of go through our facility and identify what is a high touched area, how often we clean it, how often we sanitize it, and 100%. Those are things that we are planning on doing as we shift to green. I feel like the complex has always been a clean, sanitized place, but there's no doubt we'll look to add procedures as we move to the quote unquote new normal.
Okay, Travis.
So I know at the high school, like with their basketball workouts starting today, they just don't allow the kids to use water fountains, bring in their bags, leave everything out. I mean, do you have to provide showers in locker rooms, or can they just swim and put a towel around them and go home, or do they have to shower there, or is that
this is a great question that has led to many debates within health departments throughout the state. And frankly speaking, it's kind of come to the conclusion that it's not allowed to shut off your showers. They recommend and they would like people to actually shower before they enter the pool.
Mhm.
So in our plan, we were not going to shut down showers. We were going to have staff rover through there and clean shower heads and soap areas as needed. But no, we weren't looking to close down showers. We were going to hand out a certain set number of keys, so we knew we handed out keys, say 1, 13. I'm not going to just keep rattling
Right.
random numbers. So we knew when that key came back that we would have to clean that locker, that specific locker designed. We've tried to be active in thinking through all of the potential issues. As far as drinking fountains, what we would do is we would shut down or tape over the part that you kind of just turn on and drink from. But we have 3 fountains over there that fill up water bottles. So therefore they're touchless at that point in time. And we would leave those on for members, but we would turn off the for lack of a better term, the push button drinking fountain.
I guess, Travis, here's the question. Based on what I think I've heard you talk about, what your paper says, technically, I think you could open the complex. The question is, what is the earliest date you could open the complex to the public?
We've talked a lot with building maintenance, and they've worked hard over there. They've been doing some painting and some stuff that we typically do for a normal shutdown period. They feel that the earliest they could have the facility open would be June 15th. They feel comfortable with that. If the council wanted, we could do that. If they wanted us to push it to a later date to try to get some of these other guidelines in, we'd gladly do that too, whatever you guys would like.
Okay, so technically we think around the 15th, it could slip be any time between that and the 1st of July. I will indicate to you, council, at least the county, and of course they own the Weber County Health Department. As of last night, they were already assembling into normal WACOG meetings. County commissioners, mayors attended the meeting. They did try to keep their distance of 6 feet, but the fact is they're moving really close to normal. And so the question you need to ask yourself is that do we believe we'll be ready And 15th of June is roughly 2 weeks away. Do we believe we should go ahead and allow Travis to open up that complex?
So Travis, that would be approximately 10 weeks ahead of the September 8th. Is that correct? Am I thinking correct?
Yeah, I mean, without looking at a calendar, that sounds about right.
So that would be $80,000 as in cost.
The amount for this current fiscal year, so June 15th through June 30th, is already included in the current year budget. We've just asked Travis not to spend that money, but it is already allocated, so he could operate through this fiscal year 2020 with a budget he already has. And then we would just need to add $63,000, most likely from fund balance, to the fiscal year 2021 budget so he could open July 1st.
Thank you.
Okay,
So
thoughts?
July 1st opening would be the 63,000 figure. Is that what you're saying, Camille?
Yes.
And what would be the additional if we opened 2 weeks early?
It would be about $16,000, and he already has that in this current year budget. We're just kind of frozen and not having him spend that money. So he'd have the money in the current year budget to get going with that. We would just need to amend the upcoming budget.
Here's the question. Do you see any reason why he should not open, say, on the 15th or the 1st of July?
I would say as soon as we can safely open and not go too much additional expenses and work. It is a facility with our demographics in the city where we provide a service to our patrons. I'd like to see it open as quickly and safely as possible.
Travis, can I ask, do we anticipate that the traffic can be 100% of what it was, or are we going to be limited in the number of patrons who can use it?
Janet, that's a great question. It's very minimal of our potential loss of participation. That being said, excuse me, as far as the facility and the size and the square footage, excuse me, there is some limits in the specific areas, and I'll give you an example. In the weight room, it says we can have up to 20 people. That would be a high day for us, or a high hour
We shall
for us.
have 20 people, right?
Yeah, and the thing that I think it's critical for you guys to know as you're making this decision, other facilities that have opened have seen a little bit of reduction in participation. I mentioned to you last night that a lot of facilities were down, 50% or more, and I want you to be aware of that, so there is no false expectations. But it's critical you knew that information. But I don't anticipate, Jan, us having to turn people away. The one unknown variable would be the Saturday open swims, if we got a lot of people for that. But we've never really offered it in those terms, so that's a variable that we're not really knowledgeable on at this point in time. The rest of the time, I don't think we're ever going to have to turn anyone away.
So would there ever be a possibility that you don't have enough people come to even keep it open? I mean, would you ever get to that point if you open it and then people don't still want to come? Do you just still leave it open, or is there a minimal amount of people that, I don't know?
I would hope not. I mean, obviously, if we're going to open it, the idea behind it is, that people come back and
Yeah, I hope so.
our members and and non-members who just want to recreate and the peace of mind of maybe working out and creating the energy that does. I mean, I can't say for sure. I don't have a crystal ball, but
Right.
I don't think that's going to be a problem.
I have a question in regards to the number of people that are allowed under the yellow status versus the number of people that would be allowed for green. Number two, in regards to patrons wearing masks, you know, I guess we'll just allow that to be at their purview. And then anything different in regards to the age of our patrons, because we do have a higher population that use the Silver Sneakers program and stuff like that. Those are the three questions I have right now.
Yeah, you are right on the mask is kind of up to them. That's kind of where the health department has gone with it is our staff is required to wear masks if they're within 6 feet of any patron. Our lifeguards on top of chairs would potentially be wearing masks. Our office staff would be wearing masks. As far as patrons, it's recommended, but if they're having difficulty breathing or doing exercise, they don't have to wear masks. The third part, you're gonna have to remind me the first part again, but the third part where you talk about our seniors, one of the things we've wanted to do with them is we have wanted to give them their own entrance and exit. And we have our west stairwell that leads directly to our aerobic room where we do teach where we teach all of our silver sneaker classes. We would open that up for seniors only, where they could come in and enter and exit through that entrance. What was your first question again,
Did-
Diane? I'm sorry.
Did you say west?
Well, through the front doors on the west, soon as you come in through them, there is a stairwell that we keep locked up most of the time. That stairwell is what would lead to the aerobic room.
Okay, thank you.
And then just what the difference in numbers that would be allowed from the yellow to the green phase, the numbers that would be allowed into the facility.
Green phase, you know, I mean, if the pool itself is 250, frankly speaking, we've never, in a green untimed phase, we've had up to 70 people in our aerobic room doing activities. At this current juncture, we could only allow 30, you know, with the limited space. But we have taught classes in the past that have had 70 people in that room. So you're down 40 there. The basketball courts are, believe it or not, pretty standard to where we could let about the same amount we've historically let in to be able to play. The weight room is limited to 20 participants. And you know, like I said earlier, that's a pretty rare number for us to get to 20. We average closer to, you know, 10. But it would, in theory, be an unlimited number. In the swimming pool, you know, I believe our capacity is right around 250, and we would limit it to the 125 right now.
And so,
Travis, are we able to keep high-risk individuals safe there? Because I noticed we have to have the facial coverings if we can't maintain the required distancing. But do we run into situations where that might be a problem there?
You know, that's a great question. We get high-risk people in there, and frankly speaking, we would discourage them not to be in there. You know, as we do, as people come in and we talk to them and do the things we're going to do, we would like to plan and have that conversation with them that this might not be as safe for them, but I don't know that we have necessarily a space to put them.
Well, I guess what I'm wondering too, you mentioned the seniors could have access through that west door, but I was just wondering if we run into situations in there where we can't keep the separation.
You know, and here's the truth, Andy, and this is a recreation facility, and one of the charms of it is you can go there and you can lift weights and play basketball and swim in a pool and go in the aerobic room and do activity. If people are in the aerobic room, yeah, I think we can keep them safe. But I frankly speaking, when you get to that high risk that you're talking about, if they go into the pool or the weight room, I question our ability to do it at that point in time.
Is that part of the screening process when patrons come in though?
You would hope. I mean, that's our plan is you know, to ask them that question. A lot of places aren't doing that. They don't feel that they need to. They look at it as personal responsibility, but we felt like we wanted to do it to make our patrons feel safe. You know, that we wanted to go above and beyond there. You know, the other thing about it is they'll be asked those questions. We have to do something with tracing, to be honest with you. We have to keep track of participants so we can identify. That's one of the newest guidelines that's come out, is an ability to do some tracing along there. And that's, you know, frankly speaking, a question that needs to be asked is, do I have the ability to ask a minor their name and phone number?
In regards to those questions and the confidentiality, when they're talking about tracing, are they wanting you to keep track of the numbers like the temperature or their answers to the questions? Or if they answer those health questions, would we just not allow them to come in, say, oh yeah, well, I did have a little cough, and then would we say, no, you can't come in? Or would we say, we would like you not to come in? And do we have like a little mini medical record that we're having to keep for this tracing requirement now?
We do not have to document any temperatures or, frankly speaking, those questions. We just have to be able to contact them if there has been an outbreak at the facility. So no, we do not have to keep track of their temperature or things like that. And frankly speaking, if anyone answered yes to those questions, the questions that are asked, if their temperature was above 100.4 degrees, no, we would not let them in the facility.
And legally, we can do that, right, Andy?
Right.
We can
Yeah,
deny
there's-
access.
Because even for children in daycare centers, you can turn them away if they are symptomatic.
But I think I would agree with Joe that, you know, if we can safely open, then it's in our best interest to provide that service for our patrons. And you know, I think we'll have to watch going forward, and it might be a moving target. We may go up and down depending on what, you know, what we hear from our health department. There may come a time that we would have to close again.
Agreed.
But
There is one thing I've learned about going through getting on the council is that facility is one thing that a significant amount of our seniors look forward to. It's all they have. With summer coming on, it's hot outside. You know, they may not be in a situation where they can get out and walk outside or exercise outside. That may be the only means they have. And for some youth, that might be the only means. And if we can safely open without too much added expense to take care of our patrons, I think, and we can keep it safe, I say we go forward with it.
I think that we should address Ann's question in regards to what a minimum number would be and how long we would go at that number. If you don't mind, Travis, keep that in mind. It's something we can follow, but as we're thinking about this and it moves forward, maybe we could just have what a minimum number criteria would be.
well, quite frankly, I mean, we don't operate that much on a cost basis. I mean, it's almost more of a service than it's definitely not a for-profit venture. So, I mean, would there be that tipping point, Travis? I mean, I don't know. You can answer that.
You know, and I've made this statement several times in the past of that, you know, we consider ourselves good stewards of city funds. If we got to a point where we just didn't feel we were serving enough members of this community, we would absolutely come back to this group and say, this is kind of where we're at right now. Where do you want us to go moving forward? You know, I'm like I say, I'm very optimistic that conversation never has to happen, but if numbers and people didn't feel safe coming to our facility and we weren't getting participation, there's no doubt that it needs to be a conversation back with you guys.
I bet that we will know that fairly quickly, because I believe, like you, Diane, that there is a fair amount of population, especially in that particular demographic, that are going to say, I'm not going anywhere right now,
Right.
including to the complex. That they just aren't. They're not out and about. And so at that point, I think we would know that we're not serving a significant portion of our population. I think you're right on that, Diane. But again, I don't think we're going to know that until we, you know, the crystal ball is pretty cloudy.
Yes.
Brian, do you have a question?
Well, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. My hope is that down the road, those requirements asked of us by the health department will eventually lessen, and that we'll be able to, first of all, draw even higher numbers to that facility. I agree that we need it for the seniors who utilize that complex. And I think if we're going to truly be able to justify to talk to people about the closing of the aquatic center, it'd be really, probably it would behoove us to, there's a word, behoove, but it would behoove us to have that complex so that it's functioning, you know, to the capacity that it can, when it can, as it can. And I like that idea. I spoke to Travis earlier today, just shortly about this, and I feel like it's important that we have some sort of wet service during these hot summer months. Period.
Thank you.
I have
Thank you,
another
Brian.
question for Travis. Travis, I was wondering, have we ever done questioning about acute infectious illnesses in the past before this? And then with that, would we consider doing more extensive, not more extensive, but questions that would encompass a broader range? Just because a lot of times if people think they're getting ill at a facility, whether it's COVID or not, and that can increase the excitement of that, you know, that, oh, you know, I went and got sick. I was just wondering what we've done in the past for other infectious illnesses. And then the other thing I just wanted to mention, your document, I really appreciate your document. I thought it was well written, and I think you thought through a lot of things very well. So thank you for getting that out to us earlier. But just in maybe what your thoughts are in regards to other acute infectious illnesses.
You know, to be honest with you, we've never asked the question before. And it's something that moving forward, we probably need to be more proactive of, but we've never asked any members that have came in any acute infectious questions. Would we be willing and open to ask more questions? I would say if it would make people feel more comfortable and legally we could, we can ask any question out there. My staff, one of the unique things about the complex is staff gets to know lots and lots of the members. I mean, they call each other by name and they ask what they did over the weekend, and it kind of has developed into a family atmosphere. So I think, yeah, we would be comfortable if legally one, legally we could, and two, we had a series of questions that we felt better asking. Yeah, I'm totally open to that. As far as the document, I can't take much credit. Staff worked really hard on putting that whole thing together, and they did a great job. So thank you for acknowledging it.
That's also good leadership, Travis. Thank you.
So Travis, so when they walk up to the complex, just like when you walk into JCPenney's or somewhere, and then they have all the guidelines before you walk in, obviously you're going to have that. When you walk in, if you have a fever, if you're this, if you're that, or to do this or do that, obviously you're going to have all that right there when they walk in for people to read.
You broke up at the end there, Ann, but yeah.
No, my daughter-in-law called me. Sorry, I'm on my iPad.
No,
I
that's
just didn't know if all the guidelines and rules are right when they walk in
yes,
for
yes.
everyone to read.
You know, one of the things that we've learned is the criticalness of signage. We're going to have signage throughout that facility, from where you first walk in through the swimming area to the basketball area, all throughout the facility, talking about social distancing, talking about proper hand washing, talking about symptom checks, that if you're any of these things, that you will be turned away and not able to come into the facility until you are symptom free. We feel signage is going to be critical in the success of a lot of things moving forward. And we look at it as a little bit of education, frankly speaking, that if we can help people understand that when they're sick to stay home, and proper ways to wash their hands and cough into their elbow and do those kind of things, the better off we are all going to be in the long run.
Okay, Council Brian, you have a question?
No, I know at where I work, we've used signage to prevent us from having to ask the hard question. And so I would just say that I think that we could put up the signage we need that would alert the public that we would love to be notified should they get ill or be ill, or but yeah, I think Travis is right. I think a lot of it can be accomplished through signage. And I think the public would be happy knowing that we were concerned enough that we had signage up.
Well, I think there's a couple of things too. I mean, it's just like how the airport has changed. I mean, they tell you through signage what you can't take, but they also check it, and then they disallow it when it's not within that. And I think that's a great comfort to me as I go through airport securities or as I go through specific places. So number one, that I'm made aware of what I can and can't have. And then number two, that I'm also, that it's also monitored. And then you know, the safety factor is a priority above, you know, what they want to do. So I think there's a couple of factors that you can say would create that sense of safety for our patrons. That would be my thought on it, Travis. And I think signage will definitely help, but I think we need to go a little bit beyond signage, and we can if we are able.
And I agree. We've talked about how we can even work through disinfectants in specific rooms, you know, with staff and with patrons to make sure that every individual that walks in that facility has their own opportunity. It should be disinfected prior to them getting there, but they would have their own opportunity to do it as well. You know, and I think that speaks to what you're saying, Jan, is in this new normal, things that maybe in the past haven't seemed as critical now have become critical. And it's critical for us. I want everybody who walks into any facility that we manage to feel safe, you know, and to feel like that Royse City is looking out for their best interest. Rule number one of everything we do in our world is stay safe, be safe. How do we do it safe? And this hasn't changed that, other than maybe it's magnified that a little bit, because that is the most important thing we can do is people doing safely.
Well, I feel that you should open the complex because everybody needs to swim off all them extra pounds they put on during being quarantined. And if they go and they see that it's safe, then by word of mouth, it will fill up more and more by word of mouth. If they see, in my opinion, everything that you have done to make it safe, and if they feel safe, then they'll tell one person, then they'll tell one person, and hopefully you'll get a great crowd.
And with that, then let me just make this comment. It appears from everything that's been said, it's great conversation. The cost impact is acceptable. It was been stated that our PPE for our employees is in place. So we do provide both protection for our employees as well as protection to the extent we can to the patrons. We're going to have the right signage that will be placed in there. They've got a cleanliness strategy by which they're going to ensure they clean up and make sure they disinfect everywhere they can. Our legal advice would be is that there's no legal issues here. Therefore, we can basically start. And I'm sensing the last question, Travis, you have the staff in place to be able to do that on the 15th of June. Is that all correct based on what I just heard?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. That's what makes this facility different than other amenities throughout town is, yes, we have the staff in place.
Okay, so I guess with that comment, Council, you don't have to vote because the decision was made last time. The comment was made last time that he's able to open on the 15th of June. But unless you see some reasons why he can't, my recommendation would be is, as the council says, go ahead and proceed cautiously, but proceed to try to open on the 15th. That the 15th of June is not going to work and you just slip that a week or so, so be it. But at least go ahead and start proceeding to open up the complex. Is that agreeable?
My request would, Travis, if you have any concerns at any time, let's be conservative, not aggressive with it. I mean,
Agreed.
If there comes to be any point at which you feel anybody would be put at risk, then I would still say that we can make that our direction.
Mayor, if I may, good job, Travis. Excellent work. I know I know your staff is very prepared in what they do. Mayor, you stated something about the economic impact. Financially speaking, there's going to be a financial impact to the budget. Travis mentioned earlier around $8,000 a week. We'll have to balance the budget in order to move forward with that, especially if we do it into June. That means by the new fiscal year, we're going to have the budget opening in July. So from July, August, we have it budgeted from September. So that money has been stated before, about $60,000. We can try to look for different ways. I don't know if we want to approve the budget as is and then do a budget opening later and take it out of fund balance, or if sales tax is up or something like that. But we'll have to rebalance the budget in a way, in some way.
Camille, what
Yeah.
would your recommendation on that be? To approve it with the idea of reopening, or what would your thoughts be on that?
We could do it either way. When we do the resolution on June 16th, we could include a statement saying we amend the budget by 63,000 and tentatively take it out of fund balance, if that's what you'd like us to do, knowing that we'll probably be making adjustments to this budget throughout the year. And if sales tax comes in higher than we expect, we could always not actually take that out of fund balance if we need to. Or we can wait and come back. We usually do a budget opening in September anyway. So that would give us more time to figure out where sales tax projections are coming in. And we could do a more direct approach at that time. So it's up to you how you'd like us to propose that next council meeting.
I like what you just mentioned, the latter, because we know everything in this budget is projection. It's based on projected income. We know what hardcore expenses are, but we don't know what income is, we think. But we're going to have to make an adjustment. September is probably about the right time. We may come in less, we may come in more. Let's say we put it in just like you stated, and let's make an adjustment in September, because I think we're going to have to look at a lot of things as a whole. Then what did the summer do to us? How was our revenue compared to, I think we're almost going to have to look at quarterly. How was our revenue compared to what we projected?
Yes.
Camille, would you just remind us what the projected loss for the complex is? I believe that's on page 51 of the budget that we have, but then we're adding $63,000 to what amount? Because that would be the September opening date, right? Could you just remind us what that would be?
Yes. Yes, so in the budget right now, we have the recreation complex expenses are about 572,000, and that was starting September 1st. And the revenues, I would need to hurry and add up the revenues. They're in a couple different places. The revenues we only had in there is about $276,000 for the year to offset those expenditures. That, again, we're not sure what's going to happen with the number of patrons that come. Other cities have seen kind of a slower comeback. So that was assuming that. Again, when we come back in September, we could adjust and increase those revenues if we've seen them come back sooner than we're projecting during the yellow stage.
But can I go ahead?
So we're
Can
looking
I-
at, oh, go ahead, Brian.
Well, just really quick, I would think, and I might be wrong, but the city revenues should improve some, where you've got many of your eateries that were closed now opened, and you've got another new eatery restaurant that will be coming online. And so I would hope that we'll be able to meet what loss we're going to take with those new businesses. While I'm at it, Travis, Are you there? Can he?
I'm here.
Okay, have a question. And it goes back to safety. But is it possible for the city to use those light temperature rays that they use with businesses to make sure that anybody coming in to the pool has no fever? And how much do they cost?
And I may not be talking about what you're talking about. I mentioned earlier, Chief Golden's done a great job of getting us all touchless thermometers that we've been using. I don't know if that's what you're talking about. That would be our plan at the complex, to use the touchless thermometer.
Are those the infrared type that they aim at your forehead?
Yes, sir.
I was just
Okay.
up at McCady Hospital earlier and they were using them.
That's the ones they use. Okay, I just making certain. All right. But anyway, yeah, I think where the budget is gonna ebb and flow. My hope is that we're gonna see some additional sales tax revenues now that all the eateries are opened and another is coming online.
Well, I think we can be optimistic about that, but even our sales tax revenue from that is not going to be significant to cover all of those losses. Is that correct, Camille?
Yes.
So I think we can be optimistic about them reopening, but I don't think that's going to necessarily impact our budget and the adjustments that are going to have to be made.
Well, even if it doesn't make up for all of it, it certainly makes up for some of it, doesn't it?
It could possibly make up for some of it. Yes, sales tax is based on, it's a little more complex than just one new business open. We hope that all of our businesses were able to reopen after all of this, but we're not sure what all of their impacts will be. So we are a little conservative in our projections right now until we find out exactly how all the businesses fared throughout this.
And Camille, just to draw the conclusion of the calculations you did. So
Yes.
it looks like right now, there's a good chance we will be in the deficit for the complex about $363,000 by opening now. Thank you.
Yes.
Okay. Well, unless I hear something different, I'm going to make the assumption is, Matt, you got a green light. Go with caution, and then we'll address any budget issues at sometime in September, Camille, when Matt, you present any adjustments to the budget then. Okay. Anything else on this before we move to the fiscal year 2021 budget? Okay. Thank you. Travis, thanks for the good work, and good luck. Keep us posted as you do the implementation. Okay.
Thank you, Travis. Thank you to your team too. Please extend our sincere thanks to all of them.
Thanks, Travis.
100%. They're a great group.
Your
Thanks.
team has been awesome.
Hey, Camille, I think you're going to lead the conversation in terms of the budget, please.
Yes, and Matt is actually going to lead us
Yeah.
into this.
Are you able to share your screen?
Yes.
Okay, perfect. All righty. So Mayor and Council, we have had a number of discussions with the budget, starting out before we issued the tentative budget, had the tentative budget. We've had a couple of questions, actually quite a few questions from Mayor and Council members. A lot of them we've just discussed, and they were more just questions about the budget. Anyway, the mayor did send some questions out to the council as well. We have prepared, Camille has done a great job in preparing a presentation on that. to answer a lot of those questions. The mayor did direct some of those questions to the council as well as staff. We're going to be focusing primarily on those staff questions. And with that being said, with this presentation, I was working with Councilmember Saxton a little earlier in the discussion. I know he is on his phone. I have sent him this presentation as well, because it might be kind of hard to see it on the phone, Brian. Also, anybody else that would like that can also email us or just say something over the Zoom, and we can also send this presentation over. So like I said, Camille's done a wonderful job. Camille has a couple of slides she wants to go through.
Perfect. I was speaking to some of the council members at the beginning, and I realized today this is my 16th budget that I've been a part of, and there has never been a budget quite like this one before. We typically base our revenue projections on forecasts and historical information. We look at both to come up with our projections. But with 2020 being unlike any year we've ever had before, we have had to base our information on subject matter experts and what they are projecting. So 68% of our general fund revenues come from tax revenue, and the second largest source of our revenue is charges for services. The major categories of sales tax revenue, our number one source of revenue is sales tax. Sales tax is our most volatile to economic conditions. And I've reached out to the Government Finance Officers Association, to state and local organizations, and they all recommended referring to the UCLA Anderson forecast to look at what projections were. So as we were talking a little bit before about sales tax, they are projecting that during April to June that we're in right now, that sales tax or growth, which means sales tax to us, will slow by 6.5% and by another 1.9% during July through September. So even though businesses are reopening, they still had the shutdown during that time. They still aren't at full capacity, and there is consumer confidence. Some consumers still aren't going out and eating or going out and doing some of the activities they were before. So that's what we have based our revenue projections on, is these economic factors that we're seeing right now. The sales tax projections are that it will decrease by approximately 9% from fiscal year 2020. Sales tax is distributed both on point of sale and population. So point of sale comes from goods that are purchased within Royse City, and then half of our sales tax comes from population. So this means all the sales tax collected for the entire state of Utah goes into a fund, and then the state distributes that back to us based on the percentage of population we have of the state. So this means if someone purchases an ATV or vehicle in Salt Lake City, we can receive the benefit from it. But it also means as other counties and cities are slower to reopen, our sales tax could be impacted even if Roy's economy comes back sooner. We also have a 2-month delay in sales tax data, and that's the biggest challenge with the timing of this pandemic. Businesses have 30 days after the month ends to submit their sales tax to the state. And after that, the state has 30 days to turn around and get that information and distribute it to us. So based on the timing of when we've received the sales tax data, we verified with the State Tax Commission, we will not receive April sales tax information until June 20th. So as you know, that's after the 16th when we'll adopt the budget. So we won't know until the end of June what really happened to our city in the month of April, which, as you know, was the month we were in the orange phase and shut down. So that provides a challenge for us on how to project those numbers without knowing until June 20th. We also won't have final sales tax numbers for the entire year until August. Our year goes until June 30th, And so with that 2-month delay, we don't receive final sales tax numbers until the very end of August. And I'm not sure, I don't have any data to back this up, but I don't know how quickly businesses are submitting their taxes right now, where they're worried about getting back to business. So I think we really need to look at the numbers all the way through June before we know a true picture of how this impacted us. I think there will be some timing issues. So we really need to wait until August to have a bigger conversation on what happened this year. It's unfortunate for us that it happened right now during this budget time frame. And we typically, yes,
Let me ask one question, just so the council knows that 20 or that 50-50 split.
yes,
The 50-50 split, which, as you indicated, point of sale is 50% of the revenue that is provided, and then 50% is done based on population. But that's not how it is with Roy. It's probably not how it is with any organization. Correct me if I'm wrong. 1/3 of all of the revenue we gain on sales tax is actually generated as a result of point of sale. And 2/3 of all of our sales tax that we get is based on population.
yes.
Okay.
Yeah,
I just-
obviously that number is going to fluctuate month to month, but yes, that's a pretty accurate figure.
Mhm.
Okay.
Yes. So as I mentioned earlier, we typically do 3 budget openings per year. We usually come back in September with changes that have happened from when we adopt the budget in June. We fully anticipate doing that again this year, and we may have more than 3 budget openings. We have a budget as a plan, and it's such a moving target right now with so many unknowns that we can come back and adjust this sales tax projection throughout the year as we get more updated projections. We refer to fund balance a lot, and so we just wanted to share with you how we estimate fund balance. So we take the available fund balance from the previous year's audit, we add in the estimated current year revenues, subtract the estimated expenditures, and that's how we come up with our projected fund balance. So in a year like this, you can see that revenue forecasts are changing almost daily, and we're trying to cut expenditures as much as possible. So that's what makes it more difficult to predict exactly what fund balance will be at year end. We also project fund balance as a percentage of the current revenue budget. So that percentage can change in years like this, that we have a large change from one year to the next. So as you know, we're having a large decrease in our total general fund budget from fiscal year 20 to 21. So that will change our fund balance percentage since it's based on a percentage calculation. The budget is a plan of how much revenue we expect to receive and authorizes the spending plan for the upcoming year. The CAFR is our comprehensive annual financial report, and we will come and present that each December. That gives final total numbers of where we ended up for the actual amount in the previous year and gives you a complete accounting record of our prior year revenues. So we will have those numbers and give them to you. But I just want to remind you the difference between a budget that's the plan and the CAFR gives us actual amounts. Fiscal year 2019 ended with approximately 21% in fund balance reserves. We have slowed our expenses since mid-March. We are hopeful that we can match the reduction of sales tax revenue in this current year by slowing our spending and keep that fund balance as close to the same as possible. But again, we're unsure until we start getting more of the sales tax data, what that percentage will be. So Matt is going to review our year-end fund balance methodology.
So to kind of reiterate something that Camille was talking about with fund balance and saying it's a percent of revenue. Hypothetically, if revenue goes down or the budget goes down, the actuals go down, our fund balance goes up. So to think of that, say we drop $1 million in revenue, our fund balance is going to increase by percentage. But as you're decreasing revenues, now is not the time to be wanting to just spend on different things. I wanted to kind of share that with you is because we oftentimes as financial professionals, get asked the question, at what percentage is our fund balance? As Camille stated, it's kind of a moving target. To say where the sales tax is today, we can tell you where it was 2 months ago, or to say where the expenditures are, we could run reports, but there's a lot of things, POs, there's a lot of changing dynamics. And the only time that is really settled is in December. And that's settled for the previous June, the previous fiscal year. But with that being said, there's other things that the city has been doing. We've been slowing our expenditures down quite a bit. We've heard that there's been really good sales in the auto markets because of the discounts that they've been providing. Hopefully we get a little bit more money with this budget. And so we're anticipating, and hopefully we can change some of that fund balance over into our capital projects fund to spend on some of those capital needs. As you've seen in our budget, we have cut a lot of those capital needs out. We've identified for later time when we can present that, the projects that we actually really need to do if we have the money. For instance, like police cars. I know the mayor, one of the questions was talking about police cars. He's never seen a budget without police cars. I strongly agree that we don't want to be cutting these out, but we also can't allocate funds that we don't know we have. We're presented a budget that is very versatile in the fact that if it goes up, we have plans. If it goes down, we have plans.
So based on that, if the projections, if the actualities come in higher than the projections, can we open the budget back up and say, okay, we now have enough that we can replace a couple of cop cars. We can do a couple of capital improvement projects.
Correct.
But we
Correct.
go
And
kind of go bare bones now based on projections. When actualities come out, we can make adjustments.
yeah, because if we allocate those funds right now and not know where those projections are coming in, we can legally spend those funds, which would ultimately come out of our fund balance. And we don't want to do that.
It would also give a sense of false hope.
Correct. Yes.
To me, it would.
Yeah. So there could be one-time revenues coming into the city with building permits and things like that. And hopefully that gains us some revenue. We're projecting that next, not knowing what's going to happen, we would like to propose a budget amendment for next council meeting for the current year. And what we could do is we could anticipate money coming out of fund balance, or we can anticipate money going over to capital projects. So either way, we would be fine in our audit report that we could either elect depending on where these figures come in, because at the end of the year, it's far too late to change anything. And by September is when we get our actual numbers in. Because if sales tax is increasing, we have that threshold of 5% to 25%. We don't want to go over that 25%. We would want to take that over and put it into capital projects. And we can legally do that. So we're proposing that we're going to put that up to the council proposal next council meeting on the 16th, where we're going to have a couple of budget adoptions there.
And that would be the current budget that we're in.
Correct.
And,
yes.
But at the same time, you're going to present a budget that takes us into the next fiscal year. And the expectation council would be is to approve that as well. Two
Correct.
separate issues.
Yes.
Okay.
Perfect. Charges for services are reviewed every year, and revenue projections are based on known factors at the time of the budget proposal. So in April, when we are preparing this budget, we look and forecast where we think charges for services will come in. Forecasts are predicting that there may be some slowing for future development based on if businesses can ride out the current economic conditions. But we currently have some commercial development that we expect to continue. We've had some development in the Falcon Hill area, and we anticipate that will continue. And so we expect our charges for services to remain relatively flat as there are some offsets. Just like sales tax, this budget is very adaptable and changing, and we can always adjust it throughout the year if we need to. As far as the Justice Court, Judge Nelson has done a fantastic job of keeping in touch with the state and making accommodations to the Justice Court as needed. The Justice Court is currently open and hearing cases through electronic processes. Certain trials and cases have been rescheduled until mid-June based on recommendations from the courts, but we anticipate that through this process, cases will be heard and fines will be assessed as usual, and we do not anticipate a decrease in future fine revenue for the city. Class C road funds are distributed based on the number of gallons of gas sold and the miles of road in each city. UDOT estimated that during the red stage of COVID-19, 40% less vehicles were traveling on I-15 every day. We didn't expect that large of a decrease throughout our city, but we know many residents are teleworking and are filling up their cars less than they usually do. And the yellow stage that we're currently in encourages teleworking. So we anticipate consumer consumption will continue to be lower than average during the summer months at the beginning of fiscal year 2021. Class C road funds are restricted and can only be used for road funds, but we do want to continue with road projects. So we are asking in the fiscal year 2021 budget to use about $423,000 of the $3 million available in Class C road funds and about $84,000 of the $500,000 available in the Transportation Infrastructure Fund so we can move forward with road and transportation projects. And then Matt is going to review the strategic planning session and legislative budgets for us.
Prior to the tentative budget, we talked about this, the strategic plan that we have adopted quite some time ago. I think we're on the 4th year, if I remember correctly. In that strategic plan, we look at 5 different areas that we want to improve upon in the city. It's oftentimes the places that we identify in our budget as well. With that being said, we would like to propose that we do a strategic planning session this November. And the reason why we picked November, it was to give us ample time as staff to include any of these planning processes in the next year's budget. Things that we could discuss is the budget priorities, long-term capital needs and priorities, revenue sources, and we can discuss our future general plan or our future our future strategic plan. So we're proposing that we just do this every year. We were in hopes to have this strategic plan done in February, and timing got away from us, and also a pandemic. So I think November might be the best time for us. We can go off-site, or we can do it here at the city offices. We can't make any final decisions with these type of sessions, but I think it would be beneficial to us all to be on the same page. Some questions was asked about what agencies, nonprofit agencies, we've been putting some money toward in the last couple of years. We typically do something for the Roy High graduation. That's been a little bit different this year. We've done banners, we've done signs, and we did that parade. We've done a couple of different things for Roy High School. But in the past, we've done something for graduation. Boys and Girls Club, we always do a sponsorship for them. Partially is giving them a couple of nights to auction off at the Aquatic Center. They also have their banquet dinner. Weber Human Services, we donate some money for the coalition that cares, that we feed, that we provide dinner. This year was at George Wallen North Park. Also last year, not this fiscal year, last fiscal year, we provided $8,000 to the YCC. In this current year budget, we have proposed that is reduced by $16,000 for the monies that we, community relation money that we can donate to other people. But keep in mind that the city council still has a $23,000 line item for council contingency. That if some of these behaviors, if some of these things we still wanted to do, we could still participate in. It was also talked about what memberships are we including. So such as Utah Leagues of Cities and Towns, Utah City Managers Association, Ogden Weber Chamber of Commerce. Those are still currently in the budget.
Thank you. We began in mid-March to really evaluate all positions that come vacant. So they've all been evaluated by HR and the city manager before we open them for outside recruitment. Outside recruitment is only taking place when we have a position that can't be absorbed by other positions internally. The majority of our part-time seasonal positions have been suspended for hiring right now, and there have only been 3 full-time positions we've recruited for externally during this time. We had a sworn police officer, a sworn firefighter, and we're currently recruiting for a building official. Other than that, we have tried to limit what positions we rehire for externally. We wanted to review the personnel changes in the budget. As a reminder, we have a title change for the finance clerk to a payroll HR technician to better match that position's responsibilities. Roy City currently employs 1 full-time janitor position. That position was inadvertently left out of last year's adopted budget, but we corrected it with the budget opening in September of 2019. And the remainder of the janitorial functions are completed by a contracted company. The streets division had a longtime employee that retired during the month of May, so we are able to reduce the amount of wages needed in that division for fiscal year 2021. And we mentioned before that we are evaluating each position before we recruit externally. Part of that process looks at the specialized skill sets required. So a position like this, we would consider if we have anyone internally who knows the standards required by UDOT before we would ever post this position externally. And then Public Works Administration added a new position in fiscal year 2020, the current year, and the wages were estimated at that time and benefits. And based on the employee that was hired into that position and what their actual wage and benefits options they took were, we've adjusted the fiscal year 2021 budget to reflect the actual amounts needed for that position. The Miss Roy Scholarship funding will be booked as a liability, meaning that the city will still owe it so that we can continue with that obligation for this year, even though we are not doing Roy Days. We will pay that scholarship once the winner has met the criteria and requests reimbursement for that, just as we have in years past. The other things we wanted to talk to you about, every year we bring forward an enterprise fund transfer, and especially for the new council members, we just wanted to review this with you tonight. The general fund, IT, and risk management funds provide administrative, clerical, and maintenance support for the city's enterprise funds. So the enterprise funds are water, sewer, storm sewer, and solid waste utility funds. And utility funds receive revenue in the forms of fees from their user, and the fees should cover their costs. So the personnel that support the utility funds are split between the general fund and the utility funds, and we transfer funding from the utility funds proportional to the amount that these employees spend working on the utility funds to cover the administrative and overhead costs. We don't transfer any additional money from those utility funds to the general fund, but this is something we will need to hold a public hearing on, and it will be proposed for the June 16th council meeting. So I want to review that to remind you what that transfer is. And as I mentioned, the utility funds should act like a business. The fees we charge the users should cover the costs to operate these utilities. We have increased fees from Weber Basin Water and Waste Management this year. So we will be bringing forward a recommendation to the City Council later this fall to consider increasing utility rates to cover these increased costs. We did not feel it was time to increase the rates to our users right now during a pandemic. We want them all to have access to these utilities. So we will do some analysis and bring forward that recommendation this fall on what we think the utility rates need to be increased to. As the mayor mentioned earlier, we have a few different public hearings. So I just want to give you a heads up on what you'll see on the June 16th council agenda. We will have the fiscal year 2021 budget adoption and certifying the property tax rate. That's not available yet. I looked this morning to see if I could get that to you today. That's something that the county and the state work together to set our tax rate based on the values of the homes. So we will have that for next council meeting. The fiscal year 2021 enterprise transfers will be on there. As Matt mentioned, we'll propose a year-end budget opening to close this year. And you'll also have a budget opening, or I'm sorry, public hearing in the RDA meeting as well. That way we can have a budget adopted by June 22nd so that we can operate the city beginning July 1st. That will keep us in compliance with state code. So that answers all of the questions we as staff received about the budget that we want to review with you tonight, and we look forward to the budget adoption on the 16th. Thank you.
Hey, council, any questions in reference to the information provided? Okay, hearing none, let me just ask a question on my own. Help me with one. You've pretty well answered every one of my questions, Camille. I just needed a value, if you can. Typically, what do we, how much does the city pay for the Miss Roy scholarship?
So the Miss Roy winner, I believe, is $1,250. The first runner-up is $500, and I do not have right in front of me what the second runner-up is. I can get that.
That's okay.
Get that to you. Yes. So what we do is we wait until they've won. They have to be registered somewhere to have that scholarship. So once they meet that criteria, they submit it to usually to Jody or Travis, and then they get it over to us and we pay them. So sometimes it takes 6 months or a year for them to be ready to use that funding, depending on how old they are, if they're still in high school. So we will make sure we know that we have that liability and set that money aside this year.
So with that comment, it's a pretty good chance you may still have Miss Roy pageant winners who may still not have drawn from the city in terms of going to school or college, wherever they're going to use that.
Correct.
Tuition.
Yes,
Okay.
we're already keeping track of previous winners because sometimes it does take a year or two for them to be ready to use that funding.
Perfect. And the comment was made relative to donations, contributions to nonprofits. As it was indicated, we've been historically done work helping Roy High, Boys and Girls Club, Weber Human Services, and YCC. The budget has been reduced. The question will come to the council either in July or August. How do you want to spend some of that money that's been approved? Obviously, I'd assume not to the same levels because the budget has been reduced, but the council needs to redirect that. I believe, Camille, we don't specifically state in the budget where that money goes and leave it to the council then individually to determine from year to year how that money will be spent.
Correct.
Okay, and that is coming out of the legislative portion of the budget, correct?
Yes.
Okay, and if you're not familiar with that, council, the legislative portion of the budget is where your funds, the funds the legislator spends. If you're going to go TDY to a conference, if you're going to do some other things, even your pay, it's kind of coming out of that legislative budget. And so it's the money that you're responsible for, and you're responsible to define how that's spent. So just be aware of it. We'll go ahead as this budget is approved in our next meeting. We'll come to you some later date and ask you how you want to spend it. Okay.
I appreciate the effort that's gone into this. One of the questions I had is, so you're evaluating each position that comes open. Currently, you're not downsizing any positions or any staff. Merits have been put on hold for a period of time or indefinitely, which...
So they are included in the budget, but we propose that we wait to put them into effect until January 1st. At that time, if we move forward with them, we could make them retroactive back to July 1st. But that gives us time, like I said, with the timing of the sales tax and everything, to really wrap up and see where we're at and have a better picture of what happened.
All right, I appreciate that. I know we're all in this together, and the one thing I will say from a staff standpoint is I see every day working from home that our employees are getting very creative, staying busy, taking care of jobs that would not normally be their jobs. And I'm immensely grateful for the efforts of staff from the bottom to the top of making it work. And I appreciate them contributing a little bit, holding off till the end of the year. But if we end up getting through this and making it work, I want to make sure we take care of our employees, because it would be hard to have the quality of life we have without the employees that we have.
Yeah, great comment. But by the way, I think, let me just give you a touch of reality. And Matt, let's go back till 2009. When we went through the last recession, it was absolutely clear during that period of time, and I wasn't here, obviously, and most of you were not here, but our senior leaders were. From 2009, I believe for 6 years during that recession, there was no merit increase to the employees.
About that,
And what's interesting is if you've been keeping close tabs of Ogden City just made an announcement they won't be providing any merit increases, okay, to their employees this coming fiscal year. The recession, although we won't have full definition of recession until I think it's July, when the GDP is actually, they need 2 quarters of GDP where the reduction is before someone will step up and declare a recession. The fact of the matter is that indicators suggest we are in one. The proof of that will be in July, and when that declaration is made, then we'll have a better idea of exactly what the recession impact is going to be to this city. But I just want to make sure you kind of understand that the employees have gone through this challenge before. I'm hoping it doesn't happen again, but I'm going to be blunt with you. We just don't know. And we've got to wait and see in terms of what happens over the next 6 months to decide what's going to happen next. And I think from the standpoint of staff, and I won't try to mislead, Matt, your intent, but this is about protecting the employees' jobs. This is about making sure they have a place where they can work. Merit promotions are important. We need to continue that. But I'm telling you, the city's going out of its way to make sure that we can continue to provide the service and people have a job to come to. And that's not necessarily the case in a lot of businesses going on right now.
No, and that's why I say, as we see what projections come in, we can evaluate it. Do we continue off with holding off, or do we bring them back in? It's a tough decision because it's on the back of the citizens, but it's also from the efforts of the employees. It's a balancing act. And I think if we take the time as it goes forward, and like I say, if we have to reevaluate things quarterly, so we see where we're at, just to make sure we're headed down the right way. I want to keep the city strong fiscally and providing the services that we're here to provide.
Yeah.
And I appreciate those comments, because we do have citizens that are paying the bills, which often, and right at this time and in 2008, had no income, and were just trying to struggle to pay their own bills with nothing. So I appreciate the comments, the thoughts, to make sure we're thinking it through completely as we do evaluate it. Thank you.
I would also agree with Joe, though, that we have to keep the morale up in our city, or our city services do go downhill. We have to at least be hopeful for them and optimistic.
Yeah. And Jan and Diane, perfect comments, but I will tell you, there's probably not a better time, in my opinion, and of course I've only been at this for a few years, but a better time in this situation to have Matt and Camille, who in my opinion are excellent financial wizards, to guide us through this challenging time. Their background and experience they have in terms of finances is exactly what Roy City needs today. I'm not so sure, to be blunt with you, I'm not so sure we could got through this and can get through this without their intelligence and their maneuvering. If Matt has not told you, he should tell you. The fact of the matter is, there are some cities who are not taking these kinds of actions. They are kind of hoping for the best, and that's dangerous.
I think we have to lean on their wise advice and not try to circumvent their advice. I think that's critical from everyone's point of view.
Yeah.
Well, and one of the benefits is we're still seeing development on Falcon Hill, which directly affects us. Not only are they bringing more employees up to Falcon Hill, Roy, which we have services that they will take advantage of. We have developers that are interested in our city still under current conditions. And so if we can continue to move forward with that, I have hope. I don't know for sure that we'll be able to attract some other businesses, continue to attract other people to invest in the city, and hopefully we can get through this. I have faith, but I also realize there is a reality to it, and we'll just continue to monitor it and do the best we can.
Yeah. But let me preface this, if you don't mind, with that comment, Joe. Here's the challenge we got. We just basically budgeted, if you approve it, we just took out $1.7 million, roughly 10% of our revenue out of the stream. And because that happened, and because now it's too late, we can't get into a truth and taxation process. And if you're not familiar with the truth and taxation, then I'm just saying to you is the truth and taxation is the opportunity to do the one thing that you can do in this process as a council, is to basically generate revenue through a property tax increase. That window now is closed. Now, here's the other reality. The other reality we've got is that we're going to enter an election year next year. And it's going to be really tough for a city council in an election year to even talk about the possibility of having to do a property tax increase. So the best we can hope for, unless there's some intervention, unless we come up with a solution, the best we can hope for is 2 years from now, having a city council sit down and ask the question is, how are we going to generate revenue? And that's making the assumption that we recover quickly, that we can get as much of that $1.7 million back in the coffers. If this stretches out and we go through another $1.7 million next year, I'm going to tell you a hard question, council. How are we going to pay the bills? Now, let me make it clear. It's the council that's the revenue generators. You approve tax increases, you approve fee changes, you approve all of that. It's the revenue stream that drives the city. It is Matt and his team to be responsible, and they are very responsible to manage the expenditures and do it according to what you approve. And they are very capable of doing that. But the fact of the matter is, we as a council have to generate revenue for this city. And how are we going to do that? That's a tough question. Because it leaves only a couple of choices, and you're not going to like these choices. If this continues, and the indicators will be there, we'll watch it unfold. But these indicators basically suggest is that we cannot sustain maintaining the same level of service that we're providing, then the choices will be not this year, and if not next year, but absolutely the year before is, are you ready and able to consider a property tax increase? Because that's about the only thing you can do. And if that's not the case, and that's not a hard decision, tell me what services in this city you're ready to cut. Because that's the only way you're going to be able to make it work. Now, there is one solution. And Joe, you kind of alluded to it. If we're willing to put the effort to simply look at ways by which we can try to bring in more sales tax, more business opportunities, more development, then I will indicate to you, we think we can bridge this issue over the next 2 years, 3 years, if we in fact can help drive a development opportunity and help us to bring in the property tax associated with new development. And if it's a commercial venture, the sales tax, maybe we can offset this. But here's the key. We've got to do that before UDOT basically makes the decision to take out, as you've seen in the briefing we took last year, 75 properties. They're going to take out 75 properties from Roy in order for them to get the 56 widening done and the I-15 interchange done. And I'm telling you, it's going to be significant. And my concern I have right now is that this is probably the first time I have honestly said and would say to anybody, I'm hoping they just slow down, because we need time to plan of how we're going to shape the downtown business district, how we're going to shape the 2.5 mile corridor on the south side of 5600 that's directly impacted by that decision before UDOT comes in and actually purchases that property. Because once it's purchased, once UDOT owns that property, they don't pay property tax. They don't pay sales tax. They own it.
Well, hopefully with
No,
the
it's very-
catalyst, hopefully with the catalyst of Falcon Hill, as we've discussed, one major development in the downtown district would make up for what we've lost and not only generate property tax out of that development, but hopefully put businesses in it that will generate sales tax revenue.
Exactly.
Want us to continue to push
And-
forward.
That's the only salvation, in my opinion, we see for the next 3 years until the council is ready to figure out a solution. Please.
The
Jan?
the only thing I can see, Mayor, is that we have to develop trust of our constituents by education. We can't do it by edict, or we have lost the trust and it won't help anything. So to me, it's going to be an educational process if that's the direction we need to go, rather than a legislative decision. It's going to be an educational process to build trust.
Well, and your point's well taken. And one of the things that we've held off in terms of any event, any development in downtown, is we're saying we're taking the time. Here's what I'm thinking. Though, as I mentioned, WACOG right now is now meeting in their meetings as they basically open up. Personally, I see a city council meeting could go normal as early as one of the meetings in July. If our intent then would be is to come out of a council with a strategy that we need now to take to a town hall, Jan, because that's where you'll get it. You need to explain it. It's got to be in a language by which people understand. Then we need to have a town hall where we can basically hear the input of everybody before we make a legislative decision.
Well, I think our strategy can be, this is our strategy, but being very, very flexible that strategy can change. I think that's going to be the thing that our citizens are going to count on hearing, even if, whether it's at a town hall, regardless of the venue. It's got to be with the idea that we're listening and we're interested in what they have to say. Perhaps they would say at that point, I'd rather have a tax increase. They might. I don't know.
Well, you may be right, Jan, but let me just make a point, having been here. The 3 people who basically voted, in fact, the 4 people who basically were involved in the last 37% tax increase are
I
not on
understand.
this council.
I know that, but that's leading by fear to me. I think we have to be open to what we hear from our constituents. We have to be willing to listen, to
Okay.
build trust.
Well, I agree. We're not trying to do this in a vacuum. I'm just basically suggesting to you is that to make up, and let me just put it really clear to you, to make up a $1.7 million deficit, Matt, the 37% tax increase Roy City acquired last time, how much revenue was generated from that 37% tax increase?
If I remember correctly, it was around 750.
So $750,000 increase on 37%. Do you want to know what the number will be if in fact we had to make up $1.7 million?
But I think they have to understand that, Mayor. That's all I'm saying. I'm not saying that they're going to do it. I think they're going to
Okay.
have to understand that and how that can look in hardcore to them. They don't understand that at all. No, not because they're not smart people, but because it hasn't been presented to them.
Well, I don't disagree. The challenge we have to do, and I think your point's well taken, it's our responsibility to put it in a language by which they can understand and make an informed decision. And I'm okay with that. I think that's transparency. I think we owe it to them to make sure they're involved in this process. So let's do that. But we have to make some decisions, and we need to basically make those soon to get through this. And I'm just praying, and I hope you are too, this pandemic influence is only going to last us 1 fiscal year. If this thing stretches out as the last recession stretched out, I'm not so sure what it's going to be like if we had to carry this kind of a burden for 3 or 4 years. The impact would be significant. So
Well,
let's just watch it unfold. But here's the key. plan for the worst case. Let's figure out what we can do. I think there's some solutions on the horizon. Let's follow those solutions, and then let's figure out to do that. But let me make it clear, council, we have a responsibility to help find revenue for this city so they can execute their responsibilities. That's our role. I'm sorry, Diane.
I agree with education because then people can make a proper choice, and maybe some of these measures we're taking will give us good practice, because there probably won't be a rebound to a traditional normal that we're used to for a long
Right.
time. And so maybe there are some habits and some ways we're looking at things that will be able to help us out in the future for years to come, and be creative as we're learning to be, conservative in some of the things we do. So the combination, I think, will be helpful.
And I like that. And I think we can do a couple things. Let me just make a point, if I can make a point, and this is important. When I was on the city council many years ago, Dave made probably one of the most profound statements that have rested with me for as many years as it's been now since that comment was made. He turned to me in a budget meeting much like this one, and he made this comment. He says, Bob, he says, do you know that we have about $80 million of expenses in infrastructure that has to be met? $80 million of infrastructures that have to be met. And in my conversation with Ross, I said, Ross, I says, give me an idea of what that means. And he says, $80 million is about the amount just to handle the water in this city. Not talking about sewer lines, not talking about the other infrastructure, just $80 million that we have to go through this process, because the life cycle of these water pipes we got running through the city is not infinite. It's going to run 30 years, it's going to run 50 years, and then it's got to be replaced. The secret is, if we got $80 million worth of investment that we have to find a source by which we have to replace it on a regular basis, then the question is, where do we get the revenue to do that? You've heard this budget. I think it was made very clear. Our capital projects are basically non-existent. I'm going to be honest with you. And Carl, I know you're listening in because I can see you there, but I'm telling you, I have never seen a budget in which case we didn't take care of our law enforcement police cars, ever. There was always going to be money there to be able to make sure that we can replace the old and bring in the new. And I know there was an effort on the part of the police department of simply going up and moving from Dodges into those SUVs because they're more dependable. And then I think there's a better vehicle there. But this year, under this budget, I don't see any of that.
Well, Mayor, just to let you know, we've looked at this very hard, and when we've talked about if we get more money than we think, should we buy cars? We honestly feel that this year we can go without cars. There are other needs within the department and within the city that are more important. The vehicles that we're getting right now, because we got a few extra last year, the vehicles we're getting right now will replace the bad cars we had.
Okay.
And at this point, we feel confident in the fleet that we have. We can't continue this way, but for this year, the police department is absolutely fine letting that money go to other places in the city and other needs we have.
Yeah, and I appreciate that, Chief, in large part because I know you have to prioritize where the money is spent, and you stood up and basically says, in this case, the police department's going to have to forgo. I agree, and I'm sure at the point you recommended that you felt pretty comfortable that. I guess my concern would be is, God forbid we have to go through this again and again, and it takes 3 or 4 years to get that, because I don't know where we're going to come up with the revenue. Typically, you're going to spend $100,000 to $250,000 for police car replacements. Slipping 1 year, I think, is great. I think that'll help. It'll definitely help other departments, but I don't think we can carry that into 2 or 3 years.
Well, and just so you know, I don't say that lightly. I was the chief that put in a rotation so that we can replace our vehicles
Right.
without putting a big hurt on the city every year or any given year. But we feel good right now.
Perfect. Okay.
I,
Well,
I, I
that's
think,
encouraging.
I think Carl is very, very representative of our department heads, and they are kind to other departments. They're working their very best to work as a team. And I think we need to support that and recognize that now, and not create a competitive atmosphere. So
We
I
agree.
appreciate what Carl said, and
Yeah.
thank you for working toward that, Carl.
Yeah.
Is there
And
any
Jan, you're
money
absolutely-
that
Go
the,
ahead.
you know, the state government will help local cities who, if this drags on for another year, is there any funds that they'll help cities like us?
There's been a possibility of that with the CARES Act from the federal government. We weren't a recipient directly from the CARES Act. However, that money is given to the state. That money has, ULCT has made their projections of what cities should get. Should the cities get that, that's upon the state. I'm sure there's going to be a lot of things that they tie that money to, but those stipulations have not been sent
So
out
far,
yet, so
I've
we
heard them
don't
being
know.
I've heard them being very conservative as well.
They're in a budget crisis as
unwilling
well.
to release any monies
Right.
because they're in the same crisis that everybody else is. It just goes all the way up.
Mhm.
You're absolutely correct. Yeah. So we've got to look at this. We got to look in the short term. We've got to look at the long term, but we need a strategy. So we're going to ask the council to be part of the solution. We need to find a solution here to help generate revenue. And we've got to present some ideas. If you've got some ideas, surely put those into the pot. Let's see what we can do. But we've got to find ways to generate revenue to keep this process going. Okay. Matt, is there anything else that you want to share with us, or Camille on the budget?
That is all we had prepared, so.
Okay. Council, do you have anything that you want to bring to the council on this topic?
No, again, I appreciate the work of our budget wizards. They are incredible.
Great.
Definitely.
Yeah, as I stated earlier, it is my opinion that our salvation and getting through the next couple of years, this process may very well rest on Matt and you and Camille and helping us this process. And as Chief Marino suggested, the cooperation of the department heads to recognize that they really have to kind of give in and help the other departments to be successful. And you can't help but think that that's, although that's challenging, the bottom line is that's surely a team effort that's happening here, and that's important. So we got some great team members. We can do some great things in here. Let's just see if the council can help show them the way to get through this process and then be supportive of what they're doing for us. So any other comments coming from the people?
Mayor,
Okay.
can I say
Please,
one
Chief.
thing? Earlier today, I got a call from Mayor Mendenhall from Salt Lake City
Oh, yes.
to express to everybody her personal appreciation of Roy City's support the other night, Saturday night during the all-out riot. She was very appreciative and wanted to make sure that everybody here knew that her and all of Salt Lake are very appreciative of the efforts that were made.
Thank you for your leadership in that, Carl.
Thank you very much.
And also for the information that you provided to us as you move through that.
Yes.
Night.
Yeah, you did. That was phenomenal in terms of that. I paid close attention, Chief, in terms of some of the events that were taking place, and I will tell you that I was troubled in large part because of the way the police officers were treated in that particular event. But I'll tell you what I witnessed and what I heard in terms of the professionalism. And it's hard to stand there in front of a rowdy group of people calling you filthy names and stand there and maintain a professional attitude and posture when every abusive words are used against you. And in some cases, as you've heard, we had a police officer, not one of ours, but obviously police officer, got batted in the back of the head with a baseball bat. I'm telling you, I'm not sure how much I could stand to do all that and still stay professional, but they did an incredible job, and Chief, your team was right on top of all of that. So I couldn't be more pleased in terms of your performance.
Well, I can tell you that our staff who were remaining behind were quite concerned when they kept seeing our officers on TV at the front lines. So,
I was gonna say, there's some pretty good action, not action shots, but still shots of our officers right there in front of everything that was going on.
Was Chance Malay in the front there?
he was.
I knew that there couldn't be that many short little cops like him.
We tried to tell him he needed to stay out. He was smaller than half the 8-year-olds out there, but no way we were gonna get him back.
I was gonna text him. I knew that had to be him.
Yeah.
We should have put him between Hubbard and Hammond.
I think that just speaks so much to your leadership too, Chief, that they trust you and that they want to work for.
Now, these guys don't need leadership. They've got it.
Yeah, well, it's great to have a person like you,
Thank
and I can't help but think that your contribution and leadership has absolutely made the biggest difference in that department over the last few years. So great work. Well done.
Thank you.
Okay, council, anything else you'd like to share before we step out?
Nope.
Okay, having that, do we have a motion then to adjourn?
So moved.
So moved.
Thank you. Do I have a second?
Second.
Somewhere in there. Morgan, did you know who was the second? Ann?
I'm gonna just chalk it up to Diane. I think that's who I saw say it first.
Okay, there
He
you go.
wins today.
Okay, thanks, Diane. All in favor?
I
Any opposed? Have a good day. Be safe. Thank you.
Thanks,
Thank
you
you.
guys. Have a good
you.
Thanks for all your work.
Have a good night.